in the 1952 Olympics, and he won trophies in canoeing and curling and golf and in squash. And when he passed away almost 7 years ago, we found a couple of big boxes full of trophies. And so the Salvation Army came by and took a lot of the stuff. The furniture, they really wanted his old clothes. And I said, "You want these trophies?" And they said, "No." And the kids didn't want them either. Somebody wanted the silver medal, but that was all. So we took those big boxes full of trophies to the landfill. Fortunately, there was more to Dad's life than sports. He volunteered extensively for a couple of organizations all of his life. But the trophies went to the landfill. And the title for this sermon is Living with an Eternal Perspective, and I think the subtitle would be Living so that your life's accomplishments don't end up in the landfill. This morning's theme is on selflessness. The Bible has wonderful examples of people who lived a selfless life. Very often in the story of Jesus' birth, we focus on Mary and her role, and rightly so. But let's not forget the role that Joseph played. He did not ask for the job that came to him. He just wanted to get married and raise a family and get on with the carpentry business. And then he was given the responsibility of raising somebody else's child. And not only that, but this child was in danger, and so he had to get out of the country so that the baby could survive. Not that Jesus would have been easy to raise. Like, how do you raise a perfect kid? Like, it's easy enough to raise kids that aren't perfect because, you've got a model. But a kid that's perfect, you do something wrong and the kid knows he would have done it differently, and just his look tells you that. And then there was that awkward incident when Jesus was 12 and he stayed behind in Jerusalem to talk with the teachers. Except Mary and Joseph didn't realize he wasn't with the crowd of people going back home. Only at the end of the day did they discover that Jesus wasn't with them. And so they went back to look for him. How do you think that Joseph's prayers went that night? Dear God, I don't know how to tell you this, but we lost your kid. Well, fortunately, God knew where he was. He had not asked for that job, but God gave it. He accepted it from God. And sometimes we're called to make sacrifices because of the mistakes of others or because of their agenda, and we resent it. We get through it, but our attitude stinks. We'll get it done, but we let them and everybody else know what a great sacrifice that we're making. Jesus left the glory of heaven to come to this earth and live among us. But in reading his story, you do not get the impression that he resented it. He talked about joy and peace and love and demonstrated compassion to everybody. So how did he do it? To live a selfless life, I need to get my motivation right. Hebrews chapter 12, first couple of verses go like this. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. It was because of the joy that awaited him that he was able to do what he did. Jesus endured all kinds of things because he knew where this thing was going. He was going to return to his Father, and because of what he did, many people would escape the clutches of sin and join him eternally. The Bible tells us that there is a rejoicing in heaven over every sinner who repents and turns to Christ. So I imagine there's a party in heaven going on pretty much all the time, because people all over the world are repenting of their sin and turning to Christ. Then there's this verse in 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 11. For no one can lay any foundation other than the one already laid, which is Jesus Christ. If anyone builds on this foundation using gold, silver, costly stones, wood, hay, or straw, their work will be shown for what it is, because the day will bring it to light. It will be revealed with fire, and the fire will test the quality of each person's work. If what he has built survives, the builder will receive a reward. If it is burned up, the builder will suffer loss, but yet will be saved, even though only as one escaping the flames. So what are we building with? Wood, hay, or straw? Straw rots pretty quick, doesn't it? In a year or less. Some of your farmers are nodding. I'm assuming you're not sleeping. Wood rots pretty quick. Where I'm doing some logging now, there's stumps that have stayed on for like 100 years, but that's only because the wood got, cooked or something. There's not many of them left. Mostly in 10 years, they're gone. Wood doesn't last that long. Or are we building with costly stones, the things that cost us, the things that demand self-sacrifice, the things that challenge us to be selfless? The Bible tells us there's only two things going to last forever: God's Word and the lives of people. And when we invest in people, our work will remain. When we invest in the Bible and learning it and obeying it, our lives will have eternal impact. To live a selfless life, I need to get my motivation right. And the second thing is I need to find my niche. That clip we saw of that movie, George Bailey had plans to travel and then to go off to university, and then his father died, and he took over the business, and actually he was conscripted to do it. He didn't volunteer for it. He was kind of forced into it. And that savings and loan company, which helped people get a loan so they could buy a home, and they came to him because the other financial institution wouldn't lend them the money because they wanted them to just keep on paying rent. And so he selflessly ran this company, even though it was difficult. In that clip you saw, he had just come back from a meeting with the big financier in town. And this guy had offered him a ridiculous salary, guaranteed for 3 years if he'd come and work for him. And he looked at that, and it's like it was immense. And he turned it down because of his obligation to all these other people. He was investing in them. Hebrews 12:1 says, "Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us." Focus on that phrase, the race marked out for us. There is a race marked out for each one of us. For Joseph, it was marrying his fiancée Mary and then raising Jesus. For George Bailey, his race was running that savings and loan company. There is something that God has uniquely gifted each of us to do. And the best way to discover what that is get out there and do something. And we'll find out what we're good at, and if we're not, others will let us know that we're not good at it. But a good place to start, if you don't know, is Matthew 25:35 and 36. Jesus said, "For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me. And then he goes on to say that inasmuch as you did it to one of these folks, you did it to me. So it's like we're doing with the Christmas hampers. It's feeding people. It's helping them. It's visiting them when they're sick. The gifts that God or the Bible expects us to use are either speaking gifts or serving gifts. And as we get out and start doing those, we'll discover things that we enjoy doing, and when we do it, others are blessed. And I like Darren's announcement about the caroling on Saturday evening. If you like to sing, then sing. If you like to run, then there's your niche. Go and do it. That's great. In the movie, George Bailey didn't ask for that job, but he was very good at it. And in the end, he saw the benefit of what he was doing. Okay, so we need to find our niche. The third point is we need to keep perspective. 1 Corinthians 9:25 says, everyone who competes in the games goes into strict training. They do it to get a crown that will not last, but we do it to get a crown that will last forever. How many of you have heard of a hockey player named Bobby Bond? Okay, you just revealed your age. He played for the Maple Leafs in their glory years in the 1960s, and yes, the Leafs did have glory years. They actually won 4 Stanley Cups in the 60s. And that was a long time ago. That was long before I was even in high school, and that was when only major corporations had computers. And a gallon of gasoline sold for 45 cents. That's a gallon, that's not a liter. We hadn't discovered the metric system yet. And a bottle of pop sold for 10 cents. That was a bottle, that wasn't little plastic things or a can. And color television hadn't been invented yet. That was when they were winning those Stanley Cups. And in 1964, when the Maple Leafs were playing Detroit in the Stanley Cup Finals, Bobby Bond broke his leg during the game. They carried him off in a stretcher. I guess they patched him up and froze his leg, and then they put him back on the ice, and he scored the winning goal. He had a teammate, by the way. You may have heard of the guy, Tim Horton. I see his name all over. It's got nothing to do with hockey, but anyway, why did I tell that story? It's a good story. Don't need a point, but it's a good story, right? No, but here's the point. Everyone who competes in the games goes into strict training. They do it to get a crown that will not last, but we do it to get a crown that will last forever. Bond played hockey on a broken leg so he could get a crown that won't last. But by serving Christ, we get a crown that will last forever. One part of the Bible gives a summary of the heroes of faith and some of the things they did because God called them to do some really amazing things. Hebrews 11 is really fun to read. And in verse 13, it says, all these people were still living by faith when they died. They did not receive the things promised. They only saw them and welcomed them from a distance, admitting that they were foreigners and strangers on earth. People who say such things show that they are looking for a country of their own. If they had been thinking of the country they had left, they would have had opportunity to return. Instead, they were longing for a better country, a heavenly one. Therefore, God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he prepared a city for them. One of the selfless people in the Old Testament would have been Moses. Life was good for him. Sure, he lived in the desert, but he was married, he had kids, he had a job, and then God called him to lead probably the most stubborn people ever lived, out of slavery and into the promised land. And there were times, I'm sure, when Moses wanted to quit, and God didn't let him. But it was because he had this task from God. And what this passage is saying is that this life is not all there is. It's just the warm-up for the big game. Let's not get too attached to things here. There is a better country ahead. And for some of you right now, life may be very good. Your health is good, your relationships are good, the finances are in place. And that's great. I rejoice with you. Praise God for that. But keep looking for the better country. There's a better one coming. And some of you are experiencing difficulties right now that you haven't faced before. And life is tough. The road that God has marked out for you right now is difficult. Jesus has promised to be with us every step of the way. He may not make the troubles go away right away, but he will give us what we need to endure and to hang in there. Living a selfless life is not easy, but it's worth it. Keep thinking about the joy awaiting you. Find your particular niche to serve, and keep your perspective in difficult times. If you do that, your life's accomplishments won't end up in the landfill.